Well, some of her artwork may be small, but her talent and use of color is absolutely king size. Here to tell us about it and her inspiration is Teresa Cook, the artist behind Teresa Cook Art. Good morning, Teresa.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you for being here. We should say your art has so inspired our producer that she's actually signed up, Stacy, for one of your upcoming
Yeah.
classes. But tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, how did you first get interested in art? You primarily work in watercolor?
Yes, I've been working in watercolor since 2012.
Hmm.
So I primarily mainly got into that based off the fact that I just wanted to do something different. And I was in college and I wanted to the courses were all like in acrylic and oils, and I was clearly annoyed with it, but I always wanted to do watercolor. So I started my last year of college. I told my graduating professor, I was like, I want to do watercolor. And she's like, okay, well, like whatever you do, like we're going to figure out different ways or whatever the case may be, but make it make sense and you can develop and grow from it. And I did a study abroad with her. And that's when I started doing like my little miniatures at that time, and then, that's when I really, like, fell in love with watercolor, like, even more than what I thought. I had, like, all these, like, watercolor books from, like, when I was a kid and stuff, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do then, yeah.
So interesting. For people who are watching our live stream, we're showing some of your watercolors. And as you say, some of them are quite small,
Right.
very precise. I think most of our experience, like as children with watercolors, was deeply unsatisfying.
Right.
You kind of have this messy, it's very hard to control.
Right.
What was it about the actual, medium that appealed to you?
Well, with watercolor, what I always tell people, like even in my adult classes, I tell them like watercolor was not a medium that was given to us as kids to like really learn from. It was kind of like, oh, this is something we can clean up. We don't have to worry about anything. So when we become adults, like the mediums that we're using as adults are acrylics and oils because that's what we're taught to use. In actuality, watercolor wasn't a medium that was taught to use as an adult. So I've made it my job to like teach adults how to actually use the medium, not think of it as like a Crayola project, but think of it more of like how you can really use the medium to create from it. So, and I think is all people think is about control, but the paint is only going to go where you put water at. It's never going to go where you don't put anything at. So once you learn the consistency of how much water and how much pigment you use is easier at that point. But you're gonna struggle with when you think like, "Oh, like, I don't see it being anything else," or, like, trying to make it a certain type of way. And then I always try to tell people, like, they wanna make a masterpiece, like, really, really quickly after, like, 1 day of painting, and it is that's unrealistic. You have to put the time into it, and learn how to use it, and that's really what I did. I started out doing, like, these blobs of watercolors, and I would, like, tape them out, like, in a square format, and I started doing all these blobs, and I've sold all of them. They're, like, in people's houses right now, but and that was something that I did to learn techniques that they have, for watercolor, like the technique we're gonna use this weekend, which is a wet and wet method. So, I learned through all of those, like, different techniques, and then I just started figuring out ways to make it, I guess, make sense or whatever just from learning from it. But yeah, that's pretty much like it's just, taking the time out to learn it.
And the result is with the watercolors are it's very luminous, kind of
Right.
the paint effect is just a very, vibrant, but almost like a glow about it when you
Right.
have that on paper. So you are offering a class this weekend, a challenge of sorts where people can select a literary landscape that
Right.
really speaks to them.
Right.
Tell us about kind of what you're asking people to come to this with.
Well, and this is more like for the book readers, is of connecting the art of like connecting the colors to the books that you read. So like Pride and Prejudice, like you would use like more pastelist colors, and then you would have, or even like Annie and the Green Gables too. You can use that concept of like, the rolling hills and the pinks and blues in the background of the sky and things like that, and then we're just gonna blend them all together, so that way you can actually create something instead of thinking like, "What am I doing?"
Mhm.
And, the wet and wet method, which is very easy to do because basically, like, you're working with wet and wet is basically like where you're putting color down, and then the next color that you put to it, how it kinda interacts with each other alone. So as long as it's wet, it'll work. And then the cool thing about watercolor, it does dry pretty quickly, so then you're able to put layers on top and see those layers, and I love doing it. That's, like, my favorite thing about watercolor is, like, the layers that you see below it.
Yeah. And so this event is actually gonna be at Happy Medium, Books and Cafe.
Mhm.
Is there still room available? Are people
Yes, it's still room available. I think it's like maybe 6 spaces left. So it's still room available, which I'm excited about that because I was like, I hope it's still like space left like when I come when I come. But I love the space and I love going into the space. I have my prints on display at Dana's as well. And I also have like a large painting that I've done where you can there's a magnifying glass because I did this concept that was at the Ritz Theater. It was called See Jacksonville. And it was my large paintings with tiny miniature art like painted inside of it because I wanted to like bring the two together. So yeah.
All right. Well, Teresa Cook, thanks so much for being here. You can sign up online and find more information at Happy Medium Books Cafe. Thanks for being here, Teresa.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right.